All right, well, good morning, everyone. Again, it's good to see you. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Chad, and it's just great to be with you again this morning. If you're a guest here today, we're just really thankful you took some time out of your weekend and week beginning to spend it here with us, and just pray that you just have just a moment, even if it's a moment of rest, that you can do that. I can't really see you if you're sleeping, so I won't be offended. So if you need to kind of take a little nap, go ahead and go for it. We started a new series last week, a new message series, looking at imitation. And the way in which we began that conversation was thinking about the way in which really our culture thinks of what it means to be a follower of Jesus, how it has for the last couple of generations, and really the way in which Jesus lived his life. So for the last couple of generations, we've said this: to be a follower of Jesus is you just need to get the right information. So disciple means learner, and as long as you have the right information, you've learned it, right? So if you go to this Bible study, go to that Bible study, take this class, read that book, right, then you're a follower of Jesus somehow. Well, as Matt often says, just because you're in a garage doesn't make you a car. And the same is true when it comes to being a follower of Christ. So information in and above itself does not make us followers of Jesus, right? So we've heard that, though, for a long time. And so what it's really produced is it has produced a lot of Christian consumers, where being a follower of Jesus, a disciple, is just getting more information. So the more classes I can take, the more books I can read, this and that, that's going to make me a better follower of Jesus. Well, information is important, but it in and above itself doesn't help us at all actually follow Jesus. All right? So it's like we say, here you go, here's all the information, now go do something with it. In other words, go and, informations is not a word, by the way. Go and innovate. In other words, go figure it out. And we all know that doesn't work, right? My wife just graduated from nursing school, and as she gets on the job, they'll basically tell her, well, this is how you really do it. None of that information you got was that important. But what we see with Jesus' life is something different. Jesus says what? He says, come and follow me. Come and follow me, walk with me. I walk fast, you'll have to keep up. But walk with me, do what I do so then you can go do greater things. The missing link when it comes to Jesus' leadership that's different from what we've communicated for a long time within the church world is imitation. Is it I-M-M or I-M-I? I-M-I. And so this is the way that Jesus leads. It's through imitation. So last week we asked the question, who are you imitating? Who are you imitating? Everything's discipleship. Whose marriage are you imitating? Whose fatherhood or motherhood are you imitating? How you handle your finances, who are you imitating as they imitate Christ? And who's imitating you? And if someone imitates you, would it get them to a life that Jesus would live if he was them? Well, this morning we want to push the conversation just a little bit more. We're going to be working through the book of 1 Thessalonians. Last week, as we looked at Paul's life, the one thing we saw that made a difference for them was Paul's joy in his life. Right? So Paul didn't go to the church of Thessalonica and say to them, here's all the information, let me convince you to be a follower of Jesus. Because that would be, let me convince you for your life to get harder, for there to be more struggles, for you to have enemies. Who would want that life? Nobody would sign up for that. But yet what we've done over the last couple of generations, we've basically said, come be a follower of Jesus. Let me convince you why it's a good idea. It wouldn't have been a good idea for them. Paul wasn't trying to convince them, but they looked at Paul's life and they saw a joy, an unspeakable joy. And for them, they looked at Paul and his team and they said, the hardships and the struggles and the persecution that would come from being a follower of Jesus, doesn't come close to the joy that I see in their lives. I want that joy, even if it means this. They imitated him. All right, this morning we're going to be in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 today, verses 3 through 7. It's in the back of your Bible. If you're new to the Bible, it's kind of hard to find. It's super short, but you hang in there, you can find it. Ask your neighbor. Either one, they'll know where it is, or they'll feel like, man, I sure don't know where that is. All right? And what we're going to see this morning, we're going to ask the question, if it is about imitation, then what is the life of imitation? What is Paul really getting at? And what Paul talks about in this particular scripture is holiness, right? So there seems to be, we're always asking the question, if this is the answer, what's going on in this church? And so it seems to be that somebody in the church has had an affair with someone else's spouse, all right? And so they're kind of asking the question, what do we do about that? And so Paul's talking about some of the sexual sin that's taking place in there, and just kind of, but in that, as he's addressing this situation, he's using the word holiness. The word to be holy. We're to live impure, not to live impure lives, but holy lives. That's a real big question, right? We all probably have different ideas about holiness. That's what Jesus imitates. That's what Paul's imitating. That's what we're going to get into this morning. All right, verse 3, here we go. God's will is for you to be holy, to stay away from all sexual sin. Then each of you will control his own body and live in holiness and honor, not in lustful passion like the pagans who do not know God and his ways. Never harm or cheat a Christian brother in this matter by violating his wife. That means it's probably happened for him to address that. For the Lord avenges all such sins, as we have solemnly warned before you. God has called us to live holy lives, not impure lives. What does it mean to be holy? What does it mean to live a holy life? Holiness is a life that is set apart. Holiness is a life that stands out, and also it's a life that is attractive. All right? Holiness is not a life that stands out and pushes other people away. Jesus' life stands out, but his life is always attractive. It's always drawing people in. A holy life is a life that stands out, and it's a life that is attractive. All right. So how does our current church culture, or maybe the church culture of the recent past, define holiness? I think it's a lot different than Jesus' life. Most Christians, or most people that look at Christians, when they think of how do Christians define holiness, or how do we define holiness, it's as a set of rules, and whoever follows the rules most faithfully is the most holy. And we've turned this point of living with God into rules that keep people away from God. So instead of something that draws us closer to God, we've used it as a set of rules to keep people away from God. We basically said this: clean yourself up, and then maybe God will accept you. You figure out your life first, then maybe God will accept you. That holiness is about following rules to earn your identity. You follow some rules, you obey, you earn your identity, and then maybe God will accept you. And the result is it looks like a relationship that's based upon your works. It's based upon what you do. It's a works-based relationship. You obey, earn your identity, maybe God will accept you. And then what we do is, as a church, we turn that then on everyone else. We say this: obey our rules, earn your place with us, and then maybe we'll accept you. I wonder how many of us, as we think about our journey within the church, our interactions in and out, for many of us, maybe it was just a couple little instances of the church. Maybe we grew up in the church. Maybe we're just coming to church for the first time. I wonder how many of us, our experiences in some way, shape, or form has been obey our rules, earn our acceptance, and then maybe you could be a part of who we are. Maybe we'll accept you. I think oftentimes the church has used these rules that make us holy and many times to control and to manipulate others in the name of God. We use a couple little texts here and there, a couple little verses, and we create this little plan and say, you need to fit this mold. Instead of allowing God to shape us, we've used God to want to shape others into who we think they should be to fit us instead of allowing God to shape us. Now, all of that I just said the last couple of minutes, that's called garbage. It's called garbage. So we had a party for Jordan. He just graduated from high school yesterday, cooked a pig yesterday, right? You know, with pig comes bones, and in the summer comes flies, right? My garbage can last night is already full. The trash came on Friday. So we were cleaning up last night. There's flies everywhere, right? Why? Because it's garbage and it stinks. It's nasty. What I just talked about the last 4 minutes about that view of holiness, it's garbage. It's nasty. It stinks. It is not the way of Jesus. It is not how he lived. It is not what he imitated for us. Holiness is the freedom of coming to know that our identity in the Father has been given to us freely. That none of us have done anything to deserve it, but God has chosen to invite us into his family, that our identity rests in him. And out of that, the natural response is to represent the identity that we have. Holiness is the freedom to know that our identity rests in the Father. It's a life that stands out, that is an attractive life that draws other people in. A holy life is a life that stands out, that is attractive, that draws other people in, that we might point to the same freedom that we've experienced. Jesus, when you think about his life, think about what happened to people that he invited to follow him. They left everything. They left homes, they left jobs, they left family to follow him. Why? Not because he was controlling them or manipulating them. There was a set of rules. There was something attractive about his life. They saw something in his life and said, I want that. And so they followed him. They followed him because of the life that he was living. So why does Jesus' life stand out? What is so attractive about Jesus' life? What made Jesus holy? There's a few things here that I think made him holy. In other words, a few things that made him stand out and his life that was attractive. The first is this, that he knew God as a loving Father. And he interacted with God in such a way that was accessible for other people. He knew God as a loving Father, and he interacted with God in such a way that God was accessible to other people. He constantly pointed to a different kingdom. He constantly pointed to say, there's something new, there's something better. This that we have right now is not exactly what God intended. Not because God's a mean dad punishing us, but because we as humanity, we've missed the mark as to what it means to be truly human. Jesus says, look, this is what it means to be a human being. He constantly was pointing to a different kingdom. He openly valued those who had no value from a social standpoint. The Samaritan, the tax collector, the woman caught in adultery, the Roman soldier. He constantly valued and noticed those who had no value within society. He offered forgiveness to those who believed they were beyond forgiveness. He offered forgiveness to those who believed they were beyond forgiveness. He saw a need, he engaged the need, and then he met the need. In other words, he had compassion. He saw the need. And then he confronted the need. Right? He engaged the need. and then he met the need. It's called healing. So this morning, my little cousin Xavier, or nephew, X-Man, was leaving the house. They left early today. And last night he came up to me and he wanted to show me all of his mosquito bites. They just ate him up last night. And today he was standing by the front door before he left, and I was saying goodbye to him, and he kind of rubbed the back of his neck. And I said, man, those mosquito bites still bothering you? He said, yeah. You know, I don't know how, I think he's like 6 or 7. I don't know. He's young, maybe younger than that, 5. And I said, there are no mosquito bites in heaven, buddy. You want to pray for that? I said, yeah, I want to pray for that. So we just prayed for no mosquito bites, just like they're not in heaven. You know, all that kind of stuff we normally do around here. And my point is this, is there's something about Jesus, the way, no matter if it was a big need, small need, didn't matter for him. He saw the need. He had compassion. He engaged the need. He confronted and says, this is not what my dad's house looks like. And then he met the need. He always asked for healing to take place within someone's life. Well, why did he live this way? I think he lived this way because of his values and his vision. His values, how he interacted with others, was to love God and to love his neighbor. And neighbor always meant someone different from you in the context of Scripture. He loved God and he loved his neighbor. Those were his values. And his vision was what he said to the disciples. Go and make disciples, teaching them to do everything I've taught you to do. Not giving them information, imitate for them. Immerse them into our family name. Baptize them, immerse them, Father, Son, Spirit, into the family name. Teach them to do everything that I've taught you to do. And I'll be with you forever. In other words, go and do greater things. Go be spiritual parents. Go build a spiritual family tree in the same way that I've done that for you. So the way in which he lived a holy life, I would call it his gospel heartbeat. It's his values and his vision. And as he lived in these values and lived out that vision, he had a life that stood out. But it was also a life that was attractive, that drew people in, that would point them to the same freedom. So just a couple of questions this morning as we're leaving. Do you know God's love as a loving Father? Do you know God as a loving Father? And is the way in which you interact with God accessible to others? Can other people access God through the way in which you interact with him? Does your life, does my life, does it point to a new kingdom where all things are new? Does it point there? Do we openly value those who have no value within our culture and society? Do we embody forgiveness for those who believe they are beyond forgiveness? Do we see a need? Do we engage the need? Do we meet the need? Do we have compassion? Do we confront the need? Do we offer healing in whatever way that we can? I think the way in which we get there is we just ask the question, what does it mean for us to have a gospel heartbeat? We've described it here in Crossroads with our values and vision, but even personally for you in your life and your family, what is your gospel heartbeat that you're going to commit to live by? That as you live out those values that define your relationship with God and others, and as you go after the kingdom vision that he's given you, that it produces a life that stands out. But it's not a life that pushes people away. It's a life that draws people in. And that is not garbage. That's the good stuff. That's the good stuff. That's the life that he lived. That's the life that he invited us into. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the best possible way to live. All right, a couple things. Just wanted to put on the table this morning. We're all big boys and big girls. You guys get to figure out where that lands with you. I just encourage you to be thinking about right now, what's the one thing that's grabbing your attention? What's the one thing that's grabbing your attention this morning? Maybe it's something that you sang about. Maybe it's a story that was told, a script that was read, a point that was made. I have no idea. What's the one thing that's grabbing your attention? What we're learning here at Crossroads is that's probably the place that the Father's wanting to pierce into today. It's probably the reason you're here. It's the one thing that's grabbing your attention. And what would a loving Father who hasn't pushed you away, but has stood out through his Son on a cross in public to hit the mark where you and I missed it? That meant death for him, but it also meant life for us and the defeat of death through him and his resurrection. What would he, who stood out and invites you close, not pushes you away, what would he speak to that thing that's grabbing your attention this morning? And then certainly not least is, what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about it? As you're thinking about that in a couple of moments, I'm going to pray over us. And as the team is going to get ready to lead us in this last song, it's always a time to respond for us. But this morning, just maybe as we're beginning, maybe it'd be important just to kind of sit and allow the team that's playing music just to sing over you this morning. As they're doing that, there'll be a couple of folks that will make their way up here. We have the Lord's Supper that's here today. This is the table of holiness. This is the table that stands out, but a table that invites you in. It is not a table to keep you away. It is a table where Jesus saw your need, engaged it, and met it, that you could have life. You're welcome to eat at this table. They'll tell you off a piece of bread, tell you the body of Christ broken for you. You can dip it into the cup. They'll tell you the blood of Christ that's shed for you. Over here, we've got some candles. We just invite you, if there's a need in your life where you just like to take a tangible time, moment to just light a candle in honor of that need, then we invite you to do that. Over here to my left, there'll be a couple of folks, Robin and Chris, and they would love to leverage faith for you. If there's a need in your life that you need met, that you need someone to see, that you need someone to engage with, to confront, to meet it, they would love to leverage faith for you this morning. We don't have a magic potion. We just believe that we follow a dad who wants us to be better, and we'd love to leverage that faith for you in your life today. So I'm going to pray over us this morning, and then we'll kind of enter into that time of response here together. Lord, thank you so much for a chance just to be. Thank you so much, Lord, for just a reminder of what it means to be holy. Lord, help us always to measure up what we see in your life versus maybe what we've been shown within the world. God, we don't have it all figured out here. We're just trying to be faithful. And so, Lord, in those places that we're missing the mark, would you show us? Lord, as any person here this morning takes a step towards you, would you honor them? The loving Father would. Just thank you so much today, Lord, for the work that you're doing in this place.